Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rakah Kodash. Yahweh is the name of the Heavenly Father in the ancient Hebrew. Bahasham meaning in the name of Yahushai, alright, who the world only calls Jesus Christ. Alright, the only begotten of the Father and the Savior of the nation of Israel. I want to give double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings unto the elect. Alright, this is going to be a continuation of Daniel, the 11th chapter. Alright, last time we went into verse 21, alright, which was dealing with the rising into power of Antiochus IV Epiphanes, okay, who was the son of Antiochus III, the Great as they called him, and the brother of Seleucus IV Philopator. Okay, and so we're going to recap real quick dealing with Daniel 11 and 21. All right, it says, and in his estate. So at this point, all right, you have right here actually, verse 20 says, then shall stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes in the glory of the kingdom, but within a few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. All right, which was really Seleucus IV Philopator. All right, and that's when he ended up sending Heliodorus, all right, to Jerusalem to try and get the money, and then Heliodorus ended up getting that divine ass whooping, all right, and then when he came back, he ended up assassinating Seleucus, all right. So Seleucus is now dead, all right. Verse 21, Antiochus is this vile person, all right. He comes up into power, all right. He didn't receive the honor of the kingdom because he wasn't the true heir, all right, but he came in peaceably and obtained it by flatteries, through fine promises, smooth words, and deceit. Okay, and it says here, and with the arms of a flood shall they be overflown from before him, and shall be broken, yea, also the prince of the covenant. All right, and the arms of a flood is going into the armies, all right, that he used to overcome, all right, those that were in opposition to him, or those that he wished or desired to conquer. All right, so you had Israel, all right, which was part of those that were overcome, all right, and broken before Antiochus. All right, you had Heliodorus, okay, which was at the time when Antiochus came into Syria with the armies and the help of Eumenes II. All right, he was able to oust Heliodorus, okay, and defeat him. And later on, as we're going to read in the chapter, all right, he was also able to defeat Ptolemy in the 6th Syrian War. All right, Ptolemy the 6th Philopator. Okay, so all these were broken before him. All right, they were overflown before him. All right, via Antiochus, his army. All right, it says, yea, also the prince of the covenant. All right, which is Onias III. Okay, now Onias III was the high priest. Okay, at the time, and he was, he had been a high priest for a while, okay, even dealing with the time of Seleucus Philopator. All right, Onias was the high priest, all right, at the time when Heliodorus came there. Okay, now when Antiochus came up into power, all right, he ended up removing or deposing Onias, all right, from his position, and he set up his brother Jason, all right, in the stead. Okay, and it was during the reign of Antiochus that Onias ended up being put to death, though not directly by the hands of Antiochus. All right, it was still in his reign. Okay, now when you look up Prince of the Covenant, okay, you got to understand that number one, the angel is speaking to Daniel. Okay, so if an angel is speaking to Daniel, he's referring to the covenant. All right, he didn't say a covenant; he referred to the covenant. Okay, so first let's look up covenant. All right, it says Barayath, okay, and it says covenant, alliance, and we're just gonna go straight to the point. It says here agreement between God and man. All right, covenant, divine ordinance with signs or pledges. Okay, so what was a covenant made between the Lord and Israel? All right, you can read about that in Psalms 50 and 5. You can read about that in the book of Exodus. All right, and now when you look up the word prince, all right, it says Nagayad, all right, or yeah, It says leader, prince, prince, overseer. Okay, so what would a high priest be? He would be an overseer, okay, of the covenant, because his job would be to what? To make sure, all right, that you know, Jake would be doing the right thing, offer sacrifices, so on and so forth, so that he could we could maintain, all right, our part of the covenant, or our part of the deal with the Lord. Okay, and at the time that was Onias III. However, when Antiochus came into power, he was removed, all right, from power, and later on ended up getting put to death. All right. So now moving on to this account is in the book of Second Maccabees. All right. When you go to the book of Second Maccabees, this is Second Maccabees, the 4th chapter. All right, chapter 4, verse 7. It says, "But after the death of Seleucus, when Antiochus called Epiphanes took the kingdom," all right, Jason, and that's what we read about in Daniel 11 and 21, going into a vile person standing up who was going to receive the kingdom. Jason, the brother of Onias, labored underhand to be high priest. All right, and we're going to come back to this and read on down, but he ended up, you know, becoming high priest. All right, Antiochus ended up taking Onias out of power and setting up Jason in his stead. Okay, but even that was deceitful. Okay, so now going back, Daniel 11 and 23, it says, "And after the league made with him, he shall work deceitfully, for he shall come up and shall become strong with a small people." All right, now there are various accounts of this, because this was the nature of Antiochus. That's why he was likened, or he was called, a vile person. Okay, now you have a league that was made with him by Jason. Okay, and that was to become high priest. Okay, he made a deal, he made a league with Antiochus to become high priest. But in the end, Antiochus ended up, you know, working deceitfully against him, because he ends up going behind his back, and we're gonna read it. All right, but he removes Jason, all right, after their deal, and sets up Menelaus. All right, and then you also have a league that was made between Antiochus and Ptolemy. All right, Philometor, which, like I said, as we read on in the chapter, it's gonna come up. All right, they made a league, but that was also deceitful. But that's also gonna expound on that in the chapter. All right, it says, "For he shall come up and shall become strong with a small people." Okay, now when Antiochus came up, when he first came into power, all right, when he first came into Syria, or when he first even got out, all right, as a hostage, he didn't have a large, numerous army. All right, but over time, all right, as he started solidifying his power, okay, when he became quote unquote strong, he started off, all right, small, all right, when he first came into Syria. However, you know, of course, the Lord, even though he was a vile individual, the Lord was still behind him in order to set him up to become a great power, that he may fulfill prophecy. All right, so that's how he was able to come up into power and become strong with a small people. All right, now let's read the account here of what Jason did. Okay, so now when you read in the book of Second Maccabees and First Maccabees, it's linked. All right, it's linked. Second Maccabees is really, all right, let's actually open a new tab on it, because when you read in the prologue, I guess you could say, it's really just an expounding on certain points, okay, of First Maccabees. All right, and this was actually from the Israelites who were in Jerusalem, writing to the Israelites that were in Egypt. Okay, so this is the book of Second Maccabees, chapter 1, verse 1. It says, "The brethren, the Jews that be at Jerusalem and in the land of Judea, wish unto the brethren, the Jews that are throughout Egypt, health and peace. God be gracious unto you, and remember his covenant that he made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, his faithful servants, and give you all an heart to serve him and to do his will, with a good courage and a willing mind, and open your hearts in his law and commandments, and send you peace, and hear your prayers, and be at one with you, and never forsake you in time of trouble." And now, we be here praying for you. What time as Demetrius reigned in the 169th year, we, the Jews, wrote unto you in the extremity of trouble that came upon us in those years, from the time that Jason and his company revolted from the Holy Land and Kingdom. And this is talking about Demetrius, all right, the son of Seleucus, all right, the fourth Philopator, because he ends up coming back. When you go into the history after Antiochus, Demetrius ends up coming back, you know, escaping from being a hostage at Rome, and he comes back and takes over. All right, which he did commit a lot of atrocities against us, and I believe it was under his reign that Judas Maccabees died. All right, but it says so Jason and his company revolted from the Holy Land and Kingdom, and burned the porch and shed innocent blood. Then we prayed unto the Lord, and we were heard. We offered also sacrifices and fine flour, and lighted the lamps, and set forth the loaves. It says, now see that ye keep the Feast of Tabernacles in the month Caslu. All right, and it's gonna keep on going on. And let's see, we're just gonna skim down to the main point here. All right, going to chapter 2. All right, they're basically recapping. All right, because remember, they're writing to their brothers, to the other Israelites in Egypt, so they're, you know, exhorting them, all right, to stay in the faith, all right, amidst all the hell that we're going through. Okay, and now we're just gonna go down to the point where the author makes, okay, all right, let's see. All right, so now it says here, all right, let's start at verse 19. It says, now as concerning Judas Maccabeus and his brethren, and the purification of the great temple, and the dedication of the altar, and the wars against Antiochus Epiphanes and Eupator his son, and the manifest signs that came from heaven unto those that behaved themselves manfully to their honor for Judaism, so that being but a few, they overcame the whole country, and chased barbarous multitudes, and recovered again the temple, renowned all the world over, and freed the city, and upheld the laws which were going down. The Lord be gracious unto them with all favor. All these things I say, being declared by Jason of Cyrene in 5 books, we will essay to abridge in 1 volume. All right, so there was an individual by the name of Jason of Cyrene, which wrote down. All right, he took account of the things that happened during this time. Okay, and so in the book of 2nd Maccabees, the author basically writes an abridged version of what was written by Jason of Cyrene in his books. Now, no, listen, don't get simple out here. Well, Jason of Cyrene, let me go find the 5 books of Jason of Cyrene. Listen, more than likely that you ain't gonna find that anywhere. All right, and that's not really relevant right now. We have the book of 1st Maccabees, and we have the book of 2nd Maccabees, all right, which is in the scriptures, and that should be sufficient. Okay, you also have 3rd Maccabees, which is really just history. All right, but what's in the scriptures now is sufficient, because you know how Jake gets. Oh, Jason of Cyrene, 5 books. Oh, next thing you know, people getting bugged out. All right, but as it says here, we will essay to abridge in 1 volume. For considering the infinite number and difficulty which they find that desire to look into the narrations of the story, for the variety of this matter, or of the matter, we have been careful, and that they that will read may have delight, and that they that are desirous to commit to memory might have ease. Meaning that they're not making it tedious, all right, or strenuous on your mind when you read these things, so it can be clear, all right. And if it won't be too long to where, if you want to remember the story, it's not a long ass story, all right. It says, and that all into whose hands it comes might have profit. Therefore, to us that have taken upon us this painful labor of abridging, all right, making short, it was not easy, but a matter of sweat and watching. So there's certain things that might have happened that aren't gone into detail in the book of Maccabees or Second Maccabees, all right, or aren't even written in here because it's an abridged version. Now, just type in, all right, abridged. It says here, a piece of writing having been shortened. See, so it's a shortened version of everything that happened because it would have just been too long to write. Okay, so it says here, the labor of abridging, it was not easy, but a matter of sweat and watching, even as it is no ease unto him that prepareth a banquet and seeketh the benefit of others. Yet for the pleasuring of many we will undertake gladly this great pains, leaving to the author the exact handling of every particular and laboring to follow the rules of an abridgment. So they said, we're gonna abridge the books that Jason wrote, all right, and we're gonna leave to him all the extra details that he wrote, but our job is to just follow the rules of abridgment. So pick out the important key points and put that together. It says, for as the master builder of a new house must care for the whole building, but he that undertaketh to set it out and paint it must seek out fit things for the adorning thereof. Even so I think it is with us. See, so the master builder, he got to put the details and the intricate everything, but those that are painting and setting out certain things, they just got to worry about the important parts. All right. It says to stand upon every point and go over things at large, and to be curious in particulars belongeth to the first author of the story. So that's why the book of Second Maccabees doesn't go into every single detail of what happened. It says, but to use brevity and avoid much laboring of the work is to be granted to him that will make an abridgment. And that was what the author of Second Maccabees was doing. Here then will we begin the story, only adding thus much to that which hath been said, that it is a foolish thing to make a long prologue and to be short in the story itself. So then you go into the book of, it tells you here, okay, now when the holy city was inhabited. So now is going into the history of what was happening. Okay, so Second Maccabees, isn't necessarily like a continuation of First Maccabees, though it's called Second Maccabees, but it's sort of like an abridged recap, all right, and going into certain particulars here and there. And the reason I read that is to show you that there are parallels. When you read in the book of Second Maccabees and you read in the book of First Maccabees, you're going to see the same thing being spoken about in different ways. One will go into more detail than the other, okay? But it's the same event that happened that's being described, all right? So with that being said, let's go to, all right, the book of Second Maccabees 4, which I have here, okay? And we're going to go now to what Jason did. Because remember, going back to Daniel 11, all right, we're going into an account of the league that was made, all right, an example of a league that was made with Antiochus in which he dealt deceitfully. All right, so now this is the book of Second Maccabees chapter 4. And we're going to go to verse 7. It says, but after the death of Seleucus, when Antiochus called Epiphanes took the kingdom, Jason, the brother of Onias, which Onias was currently the high priest, labored underhand to be high priest, promising unto the king by intercession 360 talents of silver, and of another revenue 80 talents. See, so he was basically making that league with him to make him high priest in return for money. It says, beside this, he promised to assign 150 more, if he might have license to set him up a place for exercise and for the training up of youth in the fashions of the heathen, and to write them of Jerusalem by the name of Antiochus. All right. It says, which when the king had granted, and he had gotten into his hand the rule, he forthwith brought his own nation to Greekish fashions. All right. So this is what Jason did. All right. And he did make this league with Antiochus. Now, as we're going to go on down, we're going to jump down, all right, to verse 18. It says so this is after some time period, right? After some time has gone by. Now when the game that was used every faith year was kept at Tyrus, the king being present, this ungracious Jason sent special messengers. Oh, Slakia, this is not the part I'm looking for. Let's jump down actually. All right. Okay, here it is. It says here, where he was honorably received of Jason and of the city, and was brought in with torch alight and with great shoutings. So afterward went with his host unto Phoenice. And this is talking about Antiochus. Came to Jerusalem. He was honorably received by Jason, because Jason has made a league with him, and Jason is the high priest now. 3 years afterward, Jason sent Menelaus, the aforesaid Simon's brother, to bear the money unto the king, and put him in mind of certain necessary matters. But he being brought to the presence of the king, when he had magnified him for the glorious appearance of his power, got the priesthood to himself, offering more than Jason by 300 talents of silver. So he came with the king's mandate, bringing nothing worthy the high priesthood, but having the fury of a cruel tyrant and the rage of a savage beast. Then Jason, who had undermined his own brother, being undermined by another, right? Because he was Antiochus dealt deceitfully with him by, after making a deal with him, turning around and then making a deal with Menelaus, because Menelaus offered more money, and basically undermined Jason and kicked his ass out. So it says, was compelled to flee into the country of the Ammonites. So Menelaus got the principality, but as for the money that he had promised unto the king, he took no good order for it. Albeit Sostrates, the ruler of the castle, required it. So there's an account right there, all right, of how Antiochus dealt deceitfully with Jason, but that wasn't the only person he dealt deceitfully with, because that was his nature. All right. Now, the reason I brought out in the beginning as to how Second Maccabees is sort of like a parallel to First Maccabees, here's an account. Because when you read in Second Maccabees, it tells you who the individual was that went and made a deal with Antiochus and, set up the gym and all of that. When you go into First Maccabees, it doesn't name, it just calls them wicked men, but we know, all right, that individual was really Jason, who led other Israelites to do so. All right, so this is the book of First Maccabees, chapter 1, verse 10. And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been an hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. Now, one thing you have to understand is the way the time is referred to in the book of Maccabees is different than what is referred to in the secular history. All right, because how we would tell time would be based on, okay, like it says here, the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. So from a particular event that took place, we will count up from then. Okay, the first year after this happened, the second year after this happened. All right, so in First Maccabees 1 and 10, the date that Antiochus comes up into power is the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. Now, this is key, because we can use this to match the secular history and the time period of the secular history. So as we're in First Maccabees 1 and 10, the 137th year, all right, that would be equivalent to 175 BC, okay, which is when Antiochus came into power. Okay, you see how it says his reign? 3 September 175, all right, 175 BC. So in the scriptures, we date it as the 137th year after the Greeks, came into power. But in the secular history, it's dated at 175 BC. But keep in mind, when we were dating the time, we were going up, right? As time moved forward, we were going up. Okay, he came into power the 137th year, and maybe he went to war with Ptolemy in the 140th year. So it's going up. But when you deal with the secular history, it's counting down. All right, it's counting down BC. Okay, so if in the book of Maccabees it says in the 140th year Antiochus did this, and then in the 143rd year he did this. That means 3 years later, right? Now, if you go into the secular history, the way you will calculate that time would be, okay, in the 175th BC, right, Antiochus did this. 3 years later would be 172 BC. He went and did this. All right, because the time counts down in the secular history, BC, but in the book of Maccabees, it counts up. All right. Now, the reason I'm pointing that out is as we go later on in the chapter, you'll see how you could use that to link with the secular history in terms of the time period as to what events were taking place. So now back to the point dealing with Jason. Notice how in the book of First Maccabees, the first chapter and the 11th verse, it says, in those days, meaning in the time of Antiochus coming into power, there went out of Israel wicked men who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, which is Antiochus Epiphanes, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen, whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the custom of the heathen. Right? So now, who was this? This is Jason leading those wicked Israelites, as we just read in the book of 2nd Maccabees. All right? Because what did Jason do? Okay? It says what? For he built gladly a place of exercise, 2nd Maccabees 4 and 12, under the tower itself, and brought the chief young men under his subjection, Salakia, and made them wear a hat. Right? Now such was the height of Greek fashions, and increase of heathenish manners, through the exceeding profaneness of Jason, that ungodly wretch, and no high priest. You see, this is what Jason was influencing Jake to do. Now in the book of First Maccabees, it just likens them onto wicked men of Israel and certain ones who are forward herein, but it's the same. It's talking about the same account. It just goes more details in the book of 2nd Maccabees. So that's what I want to show you, that First Maccabees and 2nd Maccabees talk about the same events that took place. Just in one chapter, it might go more in detail than in another chapter. All right. But this is important. So going back to Daniel 11, all right. Going over it, all right, again, verse 21, Antiochus comes into power. Verse 22, with his armies, he's able to take down Israel and defeat the forces of Heliodorus, all right, and Onias is put out of power, and later on he ends up dying, all right. Verse 23, he makes leagues with people. This is telling you the nature of Antiochus, all right. That an example that I just gave you was how he made a league with Jason, and he ended up dealing deceitfully with him, okay, and how he comes up into power with a few people, but he becomes strong. Verse 24, he shall enter peaceably upon the fattest places of the province, and he shall do that which his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers. He shall scatter among them the prey, and spoil, and riches, yea, and he shall forecast his devices against the strongholds, even for a time. All right. Now Antiochus entered peaceably upon the fattest places of the province. All right. Tyre, Judea, Jerusalem. All right. Among certain neighboring strongholds or neighboring areas, okay, under which he had jurisdiction or he had control of. Now the fattest places, if you were to look at maybe cattle, for example, and you wanted to, you said, let me get the fattest calf or whatnot, that represents the riches or the best. All right. And the reason some of these locations were likened unto the fattest places was because of their riches. All right. Jerusalem being one of them. The temple was full of riches. Okay. And he was able to enter, when you go into the word peaceably, all right, not only does it go into deceit, but it also goes into with ease. Why? Because he had what? He had, remember, we were broken. He had taken us over. Okay. So he had easy access to the different rich various places, all right, under which he had conquered. And it says, and he shall do that which his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers. All right. Now, dealing with specifically Israel, what he did that his fathers didn't do was severely interfere with the worship. All right. With our worship, because when you deal with Antiochus III, all right, the Great, or Antiochus II Theos, which were the fathers and forefathers of Antiochus Epiphanes, all right, going even back to Seleucus II, all of these different Seleucid kings that came before Antiochus Epiphanes, which were likened unto his fathers and his fathers' fathers, they had control over Syria and had control over where we were at. They allowed us to be somewhat autonomous, meaning we would be under them. You know, we would pay tribute or whatever they required. Some of Jake even fought in their armies, but they allowed us to worship our power. They didn't interfere with our worship. All right, they didn't force us to become Greeks. All right, like Antiochus did. Because what were some examples of what Antiochus did? We're gonna jump down in the book of First Maccabees onto verse 41. It says here, moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and every one should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath. All right. For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah that they should follow the strange laws of the land and forbid burnt offerings. The kings before him didn't do that. And sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days and pollute the sanctuary and holy people. See? And then it goes into more and more things they did. Now, the reason I'm not reading all of this is because we're going to come back to it, all right, in a later verse. Okay, so I'm sort of saving it for that time. But I just read a little snippet of what, all right, an example of what he did, which his fathers and his fathers' fathers didn't do, all right, namely onto Israel, okay, to where we couldn't call ourselves Jews, all right, we couldn't circumcise our children. All right, we couldn't sacrifice. All right. And when you even go back to his brother, the previous Seleucid king, he dealt with us, you know what I'm saying? All right, of course, he raised taxes and sent Heliodorus. But before that, when you actually read in 2 Maccabees 3, it tells you right here. It says, 2 Maccabees 3:1. Now, when the holy city was inhabited with all peace, and the laws were kept very well, because of the godliness of Onias the high priest and his hatred for wickedness. But we were able to keep our laws, all right. And at this time, Seleucus, who was part of the Seleucid line, he was king. But he didn't subject us to having to leave our laws and do any of that. It says, and it came to pass that even the kings themselves did honor the place. You see? And magnified the temple with their best gifts. Who? The kings. But did Antiochus do that? No. See, so he did that which his fathers and his fathers' fathers didn't do, and that was to defile, all right, Jake. Verse 3, in so much that Seleucus of Asia, now Seleucus wasn't Antiochus Epiphanes' father, but it's just an example of the kings that were before Antiochus, how they dealt differently with us than Antiochus did. All right, Epiphanes. It says, in so much that Seleucus of Asia, of his own revenues, bear all the costs belonging to the service of the sacrifice. See? And also, and something he did, which his forefathers didn't do, all right, not necessarily directed at Israel, was due to his pride. Okay, as you read down here, it tells you, it says divine epithets. Here, right? He used divine epithets. It says Antiochus was the first Seleucid king, meaning that his father, his father's father, his father's father's father, none of them did what it is they're about to say that he did, because he was the first to do so. To use divine epithets on coins. Now, a divine epithet, an epithet is sort of like a title, right? Something that, you know, people like, for example, they called Ptolemy III Euergetes, which means benefactor, right? They'll call certain men Soter. They'll put that Soter behind their name, like Ptolemy the First Soter, because of something they did, right? He saved them from something, so they gave him that Soter. But what Antiochus used were divine epithets, because he was so proud that he magnified himself to the level of a god. All right. So titles that would be given to gods, he used upon himself on coins. When he minted coins, let's say with his face on it, they would have a divine epithet written on that coin. All right. So it says, which none of the kings before him did. It says, perhaps inspired by the Bactrian Hellenistic kings who had earlier done so, or else building on the ruler cult that his father Antiochus the Great had codified within the Seleucid Empire. But it really wouldn't be this, because he was the first to do so. All right. It says these epithets included Theos Epiphanes, which is God manifest, or manifest God. Theos being God, and Epiphanes, all right, manifest. And after his defeat of Egypt, I forgot how this one was pronounced. Necopolis or something like that, which means bringer of victory. Okay. So these were an example of also something he did that his father's fathers didn't do. Okay. And what you notice is in each verse is packed. All right. So sometimes it's not all necessarily flowing through together as one sentence, but it's different events or different actions put together in one verse. So you got to break it up, right? So it says, he shall scatter among them the prey and spoil and riches, all right, which he did when he violated us in in Jerusalem. But also, when you look up the word scatter, it means to disperse, which when he would go in with his armies, all right, he would disperse the prey, all right, from the people he would conquer, all right. He would disperse the spoil from the temples, all right, and he would also disperse the riches from his revenue, all right, amongst his armies. Okay, and we'll get an account of that, where that actually didn't do him good, because by doing so he ended up losing money, all right, to the point where, let's read this, First Maccabees, the 3rd chapter, and we're gonna go down to right around, all right, we're gonna go down to verse 25. It says, then began the fear of Judas and his brethren, and an exceeding great dread to fall upon the nations round about them, insomuch as his fame came unto the king, and all the nations talked of the battles of Judas. Now when King Antiochus heard these things, he was full of indignation. Wherefore he sent and gathered together all the forces of his realm, even a very strong army. See, he became strong, but remember, when he first started, he didn't have, all right, that such a large, strong army. He started all small. It says he opened also his treasure, all right, the spoil, and gave his soldiers pay for a year, commanding them to be ready whensoever he should need them. All right. So he would scatter this among them, but check it. Nevertheless, when he saw that the money of his treasures failed, and that the tributes in the country were small, because of the dissension and plague which he had brought upon the land in taking away the laws which had been of old time, he feared that he should not be able to bear the charges any longer, nor to have such gifts to give so liberally as he did before. Okay? Because what was he doing? A part of him being proud was he would scatter among either his friends or his armies the prey, the spoil, the riches. He would just give them, yeah. You know? But he started to realize that what? As his money failed, he wasn't able to do so as he did before. He wasn't able to liberally just give out that money. All right. It says, for he had abounded above the kings that were before him. All right. But then, you know, and that's why he ended up going into Persia, you know, to get some money from them. All right. So now let's go back to Daniel 11:24. It says, yea, and he shall forecast his devices against the strongholds even for a time. All right. Now, forecasting his devices, you know, really going into the plans, all right, and the actions he took, all right, not only against the strongholds of Israel or the strongholds that were in his jurisdiction, but against Egypt, okay, against the strongholds in Egypt. And the reason he forecasted devices against that was because he was planning to go, you know, and basically take over Egypt. He was planning to go conquer Egypt, all right. And when you read in 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 16, it tells you here, now when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, all right, when he became the Seleucid king, he thought to reign over Egypt that he might have dominion, or the dominion of two realms. So that's why he forecasted those devices against them, because he was, in his mind, he wanted to reign over Egypt as well. All right. And so I think we're going to stop here. All right. For today, or for this time. And Lord willing, next time we're going to continue from verse 25 on down, which is going into the 6th Syrian War. All right. When the conflict, all right, actually, you know, when we hear about the conflict between him, all right, and the Seleucid king, Salakia, and the Ptolemaic king, all right, which is the king of the south. All right, so pretty much going to end it here. All right, once again, verse 21, going into Antiochus coming up into power through deceits and flatteries. Verse 22, going into his armies, using his armies to take over Israel, take over, you know, defeat Heliodorus' forces, you know, and really ultimately anybody that was in his way. All right, Onias the third, which is the prince of the covenant, basically number one being taken out of power, but number two ended up dying. All right, being put to death. Verse 23. All right, we went into a couple or an example of some of the leagues that he made. All right, and how he dealt deceitfully with Jason. All right, he comes up into power, you know, at first with a small people, but he eventually grows to become strong. All right, he enters into he enters peaceably, all right, with deceits, but also with ease into the fattest places of the province, all right, the richest parts, okay, and he does things that his father's fathers didn't do, going into the things he did to us, all right, but also using those divine epithets, all right, and you know, he scattered amongst them the prey and the spoil and the riches, which he did when he took us over, all right, but also he would give out, all right, these riches to his armies, all right, and those that were with him, all right, and then he basically he took up those plans, all right, against not only our strongholds but against Egypt, all right, on how he would basically take that over and gain that dominion. All right, so with that, I'm gonna end it here. Lord willing, this was edifying and informative onto the elect. I know it's a lot of information and a lot of history, all right, but hey, you know, that's why the scriptures talk about, you know, studying to show thyself approved. All right. So with that, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakha Kudash. Until next time, Shalom.